Over on Rolling Stone, they published this extraordinary deep dive article. It's titled, "Meet the Analyst Who Confirmed Russia Meddled in 2016 to Help Trump." And it's about a guy named Van Landingham. And in fact, it starts out kind of like a thriller. You know, it was the summer of 2016 when a manager at the Central Intelligence Agency pulled him into a conference room, sat him down at a table, and asked him to read the intelligence they had brought. Van Landingham wasn't naive about what the Kremlin was capable of. His work as an intelligence analyst for the CIA had given him a front row seat to the destruction that Russia's spy services had wrought in places like Syria and Ukraine. But this wasn't about what Russia was doing in some faraway country. He read the intelligence showing that Moscow was trying to disrupt the 2016 U.S. presidential election. He says, "I think for the first time in my professional life, I felt physically ill reading something." They go on to point out that a few months later in 2017, the CIA assigned him the job of basically writing a summary of what the Russians were doing to put Donald Trump in the White House. And it turns out it was a hell of a lot of stuff. And it worked. The Russians got Trump into power for 4 years. And it helped them set up their invasion of Ukraine. And, it helped destroy American democracy. The intelligence community assessment of 2017, it was titled "Assessing Russian Activities and Intentions in Recent U.S. Elections." The Rolling Stone notes it was one of the most consequential documents in U.S. history. For 8 years now, Trump has been going, "Oh, yeah, Russia hoax, Russia hoax, Russia hoax." No, it wasn't a hoax. Russia actually was the principal force that ultimately got Donald Trump into office. And Van Landingham is now opening up about this. He's now telling the story. He was the lead author of this CIA report. He says they note he was not a Hillary Clinton partisan. He was not a ringer for the CIA leadership's personal preference, as MAGA conspiracists have promoted. He doesn't have a book to sell. He's not running for office, and you won't find him on a cable news program. He's just an analyst who one day in 2014 found himself really pissed off. What he was pissed off about, and he's a dad to 3 kids, and now he's retired. But what he was pissed off about was that Russian-backed operatives in Ukraine had shot down a civilian Malaysian Airlines jet. Remember that MH314, as I recall? And he said, "I was really mad about the airliner getting shot down because there were a bunch of children on it. I think 80 children. Russia lied and said that its troops were not in Ukraine, that they weren't sending weapons to proxy forces, and that they hadn't shot down the plane. In fact, they had." And they go on to note, during the 2016 campaign, WikiLeaks and a handful of self-styled hacktivist personas began releasing tranches of hacked documents from the DNC, raising concerns that the sites were executing part of Russia's plan to undermine the election. And then they just go through this whole, this detailed step by step. Now, Robert Mueller did the same, by the way. He found 10 explicit, specific examples of Donald Trump personally committing obstruction of justice, all 10 of which he could have been put in prison for. And he was obstructing justice by way of trying to cover up the involvement of Putin and Russia in his 2016 campaign, including Paul Manafort's role in all this, who was heavily funded by Putin and Russia and took no money from the RNC. He did this for free. Wasn't that generous of him? And, the intelligence community created this interagency task force to try to figure out what was going on. The author notes, when WikiLeaks published a tranche of Podesta's emails in late October, the link between the Russian hackers and the releases became undeniable. In fact, that dump contained the original spear phishing email that got Podesta's password to the Russian intelligence services, which was proof that it was the Russians behind the campaign. And Van Landingham says, he was not pleased about having to write this thing up, right? He was like, it's just going to antagonize Trump. It's just going to, and he's going to be president. I don't want to write this thing, but they said, no, you got to do it. And so he says, I viewed my role as mostly like cataloging a historical thing that happened. And the article notes Moscow's military intelligence hackers had left a trail of public clues behind them. The Russian military hacking unit that went after Hillary Clinton, had targeted up to 4,000 different email addresses. And it wasn't just American political operatives who'd gotten the messages. The unclassified version of the intelligence report concluded that Putin had, quote, ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the U.S. presidential election and had, quote, developed a clear preference for Trump and, quote, aspired to help Trump's election chances when possible. And they did. And there was broad agreement in the intelligence community about this. And you'll recall, this is why when Trump met with Putin in Helsinki, he got up there and he said, you know, Putin says he didn't do this. I believe him. But then one of the reporters said to Putin, did you have a preference in the 2016 election? And Putin says, yeah, I wanted Trump. He basically admitted it. This was in 2018 in Helsinki. He said, yes, I wanted him to win. Those were his exact words. So here we now have a former CIA officer who actually was the lead author of the document laying out how Russia put Trump in the White House. And make no mistake, they're going to try and do it again. With a little help from their good friend Elon Musk, who prevented Ukraine from using his Starlink system to attack a Russian ship, and who just published over on X a deep fake video of Kamala Harris without labeling it as such, in violation of X's rules. I mean, this is, it's like history repeats itself. But this time we're awake. This time we know what's going on. And, you know, this time we're not going to fall for it. It's just that simple.